All right. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, or depending on when you're watching this. We're so excited to have you join us today for this workshop on customer acquisition through A/B testing. My name is Shane, and I'm here to introduce to all of you our workshop facilitator today. So, allow me to take the opportunity to introduce to all of you one of the DMZ's own entrepreneurs in residence, or EIRs, as we like to call them, Mano, who will be joining us to facilitate the workshop today. For those of you who are joining us on YouTube, please feel free to put your comments in the chat. We will be sourcing questions to ask throughout the presentation and at the end, as well as we'll also have a copy of this deck and a recording of this video to send out to all of our participants as well. Without any further ado, though, I would like to take the opportunity once again to introduce all of you to our workshop facilitator today. So thank you, Mano, once again so much for joining us and sharing your expertise and guidance. It's a pleasure to have you, and over to you. Thank you so much once again.
Great. Thanks, Shane. Thanks for the intro. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us today for this session on customer acquisition with A/B testing. This is certainly, in response to the current environment we're in with COVID-19, where the session hopefully will focus on some areas around growth and customer acquisition, and I hope to provide you guys some tips and advice on how to weather and navigate through this environment that we're in. I will certainly focus on various areas in terms of channels for customer acquisition. Some areas I won't get into, and I'll touch base on why, but hopefully you'll find this informative. Quick little intro on me. I built a startup in 2008 during the financial crisis, so during the economical downturn. So I have some experiences in terms of navigating, the tough times, and my areas of expertise are in business strategy, engineering, product, and also operations. So hopefully this can be helpful in terms of in the future as well. Customer acquisition in turbulent times, we're in a time where there's a lot of uncertainty, and the market, we don't know where the market is going either. Customer behavior is changing every day, and what the pain that they're feeling is, there's a lot of changes that's happening on their end as well. And it's hard to predict that because we don't have a lot of data. We don't know when this period's going to end. And we're currently in a state of shock. We're trying to figure it out. We're going to go into an adjustment period where once there is ways to manage the pandemic, we're going to figure out how to adjust to it. And then you're going to go into a new normal. And it's going to be definitely different than what it was before. And there's going to be a lot of changes that will come with it as well. So, it's even myself, having gone through the 2008 recession, this is totally different, and so we're all gonna have to figure out how to navigate through this, and and hopefully I can provide some insight into helping you with on the growth side. In terms of the channels, I categorize into two: the online channels and offline. Offline being business development, direct sales, trade shows, and PR. I'm not going to focus on those on this session. Certainly, my focus is going to be on the online channels, and that's where, especially given the current environment, this is an area that I think it'll be great to double down and focus on and activate these channels if you haven't done it already. But the offline channels do work as well. So one of the things that I would say as a startup, if you are focusing on these channels for growth, certainly try to focus on one or two rather than trying to do all of it at once. It's important for you to try and really focus on a channel and activate it and see if you can get that to work to your advantage. And if it doesn't, then you can do some experiment. Otherwise, go on to a different channel. But your target customer better, and you should really cater your the channels to your the right channels to your target customer, because that's where you're going to see a lot of value. And there are factors you should consider, especially if you're in the B2C side of it. There's there's different factors that you have to consider versus on the B2B. And even within B2B, you've got different sizes of businesses that you may be targeting. And so the number of decision makers may differ. The sales cycle is still definitely different where your target is. And especially now, given that there's a lot of challenges on your customer fronts as well, these things might be a lot, extended as well. And budget size, right? Every segments have their own different budget size and what they can, what they can manage, right? So those are things that you should really consider and factor into your channel selection. Experimentation, drives business results. I mean, this is not new. It's been around, and there's a lot of great success stories around it and case studies. I think what's important is that as a startup, you should really foster and encourage experimentation in your culture. I think it's important that experimentation can be done in every aspect of your business, not just in in sales or growth. But you want to be able to make sure that that's ingrained in your culture and that you're constantly experimenting in everything you do, because it really, there's a lot of case studies that show the success of experimenting. My recommendation is that when you're experimenting, try to pick one variable to test and work with, and identify your goal. What's your goal for that particular experiment? And create at least two groups to test your experiment with, and split them equally and randomly so that you can see some variation on your tests as well. And it's also important to identify the significant of the results that you want to achieve, and really define what your ultimate goal is for that experiment.
And so we have a question from the audience. So the question is, how does your, marketing techniques or acquisition channel strategy or A/B strategy work when your solution is B2B rather than B2C?
In terms of the B2C and B2B, well, it's really, and I'm going to get into the different channels, but if you're doing B2C, your target audience is much different than your B2B customers. And so you really need to understand what's going to work for your target audience in the B2C side, which, you would have to use different channels, which are much more engaging with those audience, versus on the B2B, you have to be a bit more subject matter expert in terms of when you're trying to sell into the B2B side. So it's you might try different channels within there, but you would have to take a different approach to a B2B in that sense. And I'll try to give you guys an example as I go, and certainly provide the comparisons there as well. So here's this is an old example, but I think it's really it's valuable in the current times we're in, because this is for the presidential election for Obama, and Obama's campaign was able to actually raise 60 million, but just doing some simple experiments. And just to show you the differences, that you've got a landing page where you allow your donors to sign up and be informed of the campaign, and just by changing the picture and experimenting with the picture and the label on the call to action, they were able to see which one provided much better engagement, much more sign up in terms of user base. And so by doing that, they were able to increase the users, and in return that translated into more donation for the campaign. So these are the type of things that I would say doing simple experiments are going to drive a much bigger output and or positive value overall for you. So with that, I'm going to go into each of these the online channels and give you specific feedback on what works and what doesn't, and I'm going to give a recommendation from an A/B testing perspective. Mind you, I'm not going to go into a lot of details here, but I'm going to be as practical as possible in providing this. But there's certainly, I'll provide some resources that you should look at to really dive a little deep and figure out what's the right content for you to work on. So looking at content marketing, it is broad. There's a lot of different content marketing strategies you can apply, from blogs, articles to guides, ebooks, video, which is huge. But I think what's important is that you have to decide what you want to achieve with your content, and that could be brand awareness, or increasing your sales, or increasing your your authenticity and trust within your prospects, customers. So you have to kind of figure out what are the different goals that you want to set for that. But what's important is that you find strong topics to apply your content strategy on. And what I mean by that is that you have to put yourself in your customer's shoes, or your potential customers who are reading this content, and the content has to be really about what are your customers really passionate about, what do they see value, and even just asking your customer what type of content that you want to see, right? And so finding that topic is going to be key. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to create contents that's been written about already, or there are a lot of it that's already out there. You want to find unique angles that are going to really catch the eyes of your potential customers, and they're going to want to engage with those content. And another thing is, like, you can build trust by bringing in your customers into your content strategy, involving them as part of the content, or including some quotes, or tweets from them to help sort of validate and build trust on that content as well. So that helps really helps a lot as well. And the other one, videos definitely provides a higher engagement. It's already there, and it's known stats. And so I would try to do more video if you can. You don't have to do expensive videos. You can try to be a bit more creative and create low-cost videos that's going to still deliver much more engagement. So I would try to focus on that. And one of the other things that I would try to do is, like, try to share insights that you're uncomfortable with. As startups, we make a lot of mistakes. Talk about them. I think those are, that makes you more humble, humanly, and more approachable. And so talk about the mistakes you made and how you were able to overcome those mistakes. And that's going to really help build a lot of rapport with your customer base as well. And then the last one, especially with the current environment we're in, I would look at running live virtual sessions. These are great to getting a lot more engagement with potential customers and existing customers, and including partners and customers into your session is going to even drive a lot more value. So look at ways and topics that you can discuss in the time we're in, and how to navigate, helping navigate through that as well for your customer base. In terms of content marketing A/B testing, like I said, I would say focus on the smallest details. Title, experimenting with that, and images. You'll be surprised how images make a huge difference in terms of engagement. So doing experiments with that. Length of your content. For some content, shorter is better. And for some, it's actually longer is better, because there's a lot more value that customers may see in a lot of lengthier content, which has a lot more insights that they can get out of it. Experimenting with landing pages and call to action. I mean, you'd be surprised that, when you have a landing page where you have a form fill, just that form fill and what you do, the fields that you're trying to capture can make a huge difference in actually creating conversions. And so, it's experimenting with that and figuring out the right balance is going to be key. And so that in terms of the metrics that I will look for are, views, social media shares, backlinks. These are key metrics that you want to keep an eye on in terms of your content. Some of the resources that I would look at are BuzzSumo. It's a great website to kind of look at your content and how your content is doing. Co-scheduling is a great tool to pre-schedule your content releases, so that you have a consistent cadence in terms of how you're getting your content out as well. Optimizely is a great A/B testing tool. There are many other ones out there as well. And then Canva, obviously when you're putting out content, you want to make sure your content looks nice, presentable. And so rather than hiring, designers and paying for that, Canva is a great site to use. They have pre-built designs and easy WYSIWYG capability to design contents in there as well. So that's there. And then HubSpot is a great resource. They have tons of resources on content marketing, and it's a great spot to go and learn more about it. Email marketing. This is probably one of the older online marketing, and it's still, still pretty strong. Email is still the #1 driver of promotion conversion. It's still hands down. And what I would say is, in terms of email marketing, when you're doing a lot of email marketing, focus on dedicated, targeted email campaigns. What you don't want, what's been shown is that if you're sending a lot of aggregated content emails, the engagement level is much lower. So focus on targeted campaign and ensure that you're targeting it in that approach. Make sure you're optimized for mobile. Personalization is huge. It has a much higher open rate, and if you can personalize your email marketing around either individual user or the customer, or a cohort of customers, and targeting them in that way is going to give you a much better success rate. And definitely I would recommend growing your email list organically. It's going to give you a much longevity in terms of your customer base to keep active in this marketing. If you try to buy list and try to do email marketing, it's not really it hasn't shown much success rate. What I would decide to test on this is, like, I would probably test the smallest thing, like subject line. And you'd be surprised that even when you're looking at your email app on your phone, the subject comes up, and then sometimes you can even see a small description of what's on the email. Those things matter, because that's what's going to grab the user's attention. And so looking at those and testing those are going to be key. Headlines and the call to actions are important. Optimize your design. Try to ensure that based on what are the best practices out there, and try to apply some of that. And in terms of metrics, I would say look at open rate, click-through rate, and then the conversion rate once they're on your website and you're able to convert them. Some of the resources that I would look at are Campaign Monitor and MailChimp. These are great tools that are out there. One really good one is like reallygoodemails.com. There are great samples of email marketing letters out there that you can look at what others have done and what works. So that's a really great resource to look at. And then sumo.com and HelloBar. These are two tools that you can actually tool to use for capturing emails off of your website, so that you're building your list organically that way.
And so a question from the audience as we're talking about email marketing is they want to know at what levels of traffic or email sends is it worthwhile to run A/B tests. So, how many emails should you have on a list, as an example, before it makes sense to run A/B tests to get meaningful data from the results of the campaign?
Well, I mean, I think it's, I wouldn't quantify it by the number, because, if you have 100, emails that you're targeting, it's still worth it to actually apply a test on it, because you want to know that you can convert more, right? Because ultimately the goal with A/B testing is you're finding the optimal marketing that's actually getting much more conversion for you. And so it could be even 10, but if you can convert out of 10, 8 of them, that's a great success. And so if you do the test, so I think some of these tests doesn't require a lot of work, and it can be done very quickly. And so I would encourage you to start incorporating that early as possible. Okay, moving on. SEM and SEO. What I would say, this is probably a channel that if you're gonna focus on this, I would say go all in and really put your time into it, because if you're doing it just halfway through, it's really, you're not going to see much of the results from it. You really need to spend the time and make sure that you're putting the effort behind and increasing your SEO ranking. And 75% of the time, like we definitely, we don't go past the first page of the search results, and so you want to make sure you're optimizing your keywords for your right target customers, and ensuring that that's done appropriately. And I would say, it's not just SEO, doesn't just matter to your website. It's about where your content lives, and it can be off of your website and other, it could be in a different places like your partner pages. It can be in customer reviews, and so wherever your content lives offsite, I think that's important to focus as well, because you want to have that references back to your website. So that's a key way to increase your ranking. Customer reviews are a huge, I would say it's a big part of buying behavior, and I think there's the stats are there to prove it. It's important that you pay attention to this, because this has a huge impact on your customer's perception of you and what your product and services that you're offering. And so, if they're feedback that are constructive, you should pay attention and address them in the right way, so that we're able to maintain a good overall perception with the potential customers. I would say for SEO, don't create two different pages that you want to test the ranking on. I think, and that's actually it'll give you a negative impact on ranking. What the recommended way to do it is to really create groups of users and target them different variation of the same page. And the way you can do that is, you use a 302 redirects, which are temporary redirect for your variation URLs, but you're testing it on the same content, and you're not using a 301, which is a permanent redirect. What's important is that with 302, the search engine rank, the bots, they won't actually penalize you for this, and so which won't impact your ranking. So that's important. That's the way you want to test your ranking variations. In terms of metrics, focus on organic traffic. That's a big part of that. Keyword ranking, number of backlinks is very important, and the authority metrics are another key metrics that I would focus on. Tools wise, Google keyword tool is the way to go to in terms of looking at your ranking on Google. Moz tool and SEMrush, they're really great tools as well. I would definitely pay attention to them. They give you, SEMrush will give you not just your SEO on the web, but it'll go into social and other mediums as well to give you a holistic view as well. So it's a good way to kind of get a broader picture. Social media marketing, certainly depending on where your focus is, there are different networks you can target. And I think what you have to do is, as you're looking for your target customer, is to focus on the network that's going to give you the optimal return. And so prioritize your network and interact with the audience in that way. I think with social networks, it's important to be transparent and really be helpful. Don't be selling on social media. Try to be more, take a consultative approach. Be a bit more than just selling your products and services on it. It's important to sort of match the right content for the right social network. What works in Instagram will now work in LinkedIn, and so you want to make sure that you're targeting it in the right way, and the messaging has to be right as well. The other one is, like, if you're picking influencers, make sure that they share the same value as your brand and what you're trying to achieve. Because if there's misalignment in that can really hurt your brand and create a negative perception overall. So pay attention to that as well. With social media marketing, I would say testing areas are imagery with or without, things like image versus video. What are you getting better engagement? Hashtag the length of copy, and ad format. These are things that I would really look at, pay attention and experimenting with more. And, focus on testing more than one post at a time, because then you can understand the differences there, and collect more data out of it, and make sure you're consistently posting so that you're able to track your engagement level. In terms of metrics, engagement, likes, comments, share, repost, awareness is a key area to pay attention to, and then referrals and conversions from there. So how that happens is also important. Resources wise, Hootsuite or Sprout Social, those are key ones to really help you with managing your social network marketing. And then Unified is a great one to really help with the ad platform as well for social marketing. Moving on to online ads, I think this is an area I would say, given the current times, and if you're trying to be cost conscious and reducing your cost, is an area where you really do want to evaluate that, because it can be expensive, and it can get expensive very quickly. And so we really want to make sure you pay attention to this as well. But if you are, investing in online ads in this time, there's a broad area for online ads, and there's a lot you can do with it. But I'll focus on a few things here. If you are doing ad placements, make sure the copy, the landing page for the call to actions they're very important. And so focus on ensuring you're doing the right best practices to manage those. Test your ad on variations simultaneously to minimize time-based factor. Because one thing different about ads is that you don't have a lot of time, because the more you let the ads run without really doing a lot of experimentation, the more money you'll end up losing, and you're not going to get the results that you want. So, testing one thing at a time, but testing early, testing often, and then changing it as you need is going to be key. I would say focus on the data. That's very, the more data you're collecting from there, it's going to give you the right information to make the next decision on the ads. In terms of testing, I would focus on keywords, the ad displays, headlines, body text, and links. The metrics are impressions, click-through rates, conversion rates. Once they're on the link. Some of the resources I would look at are Unbounce, Unified again, OmniConvert, and Neil Patel's tool as well is a great tool to look at. All right, so I wanted to kind of get into a couple of more slides, and really this is sort of from my perspective. During these times, what are the things that really, as a startup, you should focus on, especially in terms of growth. I would say the number one thing that you should focus on is customer retention, because you have customers, and if you have customers, you want to make sure they stay with you, and it's very important that you're understanding what's happening to them, and what the challenges they're going through, and so making sure that you're talking to your customer, understanding their pain points, it's going to be key. So retention should be number one priority. I would say in terms of your goals for Q2, Q3, you definitely will need to revise them. My view is that there's two approaches you can do. You can endure it and make sure you have a good balance sheet to actually weather this and without making a lot of changes, or you can adapt, right, and then make changes and readjust your overall plans. And so set up a 4-week, 4 to maybe 6 week sprints, and just focus on sort of that sprint, and then figure out what you need to adjust and revise as you need, because it's a lot. There's a lot of uncertainty, and it's hard to plan that far in advance, and so you're gonna have to make some changes as you go. So working in that manner is gonna help you. Definitely, we'll have to look at your financials and your forecast. Forecast needs to be a lot more conservative. The run rate that I think, personally is like you're going to need at least a 12-month run rate in terms of how to weather this. And we don't know when, when things do change and get back to in business, how long the recovery is going to be. And, we don't know how long before actually customers look to spend more money, right? And so it's important that you have a constructive, conservative financial forecast, and give yourself enough breathing room to make sure that you can weather the current times. I would definitely rethink your ideal customer, target customer, and especially your messaging and your touch points. Um, I would look at that across the board, from your sales, your marketing, your customer success, all of that. You want to look at that and ensure that you've got, you're changing your messaging to the current environment, and ensuring you're focusing on what's your value add. I highly advise to using COVID as the messaging in your overall communication. It's shown to be very negative, and so what you want to target is more of a positive way to do your communication. The next one is really around during this tough times, your customers are looking at reducing cost, and so if you can position yourself in a way as a value proposition on cost cutting, you will definitely have a higher conversion in terms of continuing to acquire more customers that way. So the next one is, if you're a startup that you've got a really long runway, if you've got, let's say, 18 months, 24-month run rate, I would look at this as an opportunity to acquire market share aggressively. The way to do it is you buy out competitors' contract, because you don't know what your competitor's position is. They might be struggling, and they might have challenges. And this is where you can go in. If you have, your onboarding cost is not as high, you can give away your product or services for 6 to 12 months at zero cost to your customer, because your customer is going through cost reduction challenges. And so this is a way to alleviate that, and buy the market a bit in this way. It's a bit of an aggressive way to do it, but if you can afford to do it, it's a great way to increase your market share. The next is reducing your focus on top line revenue, instead focus on retention. So I've touched on this, but focus on, you have customers that are going to come up for renewal, right? So that could be a few months from now, or 6 months from now. And so look at being proactive and reaching out to them and offering them some kind of discount, so that you can lock down those discounts now. What you don't want to do is leave it till the end, and then you realize they're going to churn and it's too late. So try to be a bit more proactive in that approach. Focus on product usage, active usage of your product, rather than churn. Churn is an lagging indicator. So look at how your customers are using your product, and they should be using it on a active ways, so that there's your product is adding value. And if it's not, then there's a high risk for churn when that renewal comes up. So try to pay attention to that. And then last, these are tough times, and just like we are going through a tough time, your customers are going to go through tough times, and so understand how their lives have changed in this environment, and approach in a consultative approach. Think out of the box, be creative in some small token of things you can do for them. That's going to drive more, much more appreciation for you as a partner with them. So those are things that I would really advise on. And every startup, you have different challenges in this environment, but ultimately, if you focus and really pay attention to your customer base, and I think that's going to help you continuing to grow your overall customers. All right. So with that, I'll open it up for more questions.
Okay, perfect. Well, first off, thank you once again. So we've been collecting some questions from the audience as the presentation continued, but of course, everyone, please feel free to post any in the chat. So you went over a few of the resources as you were going over each example, email marketing, SEO, SEM, but are there any other blogs or resources or people that you would really recommend to go to and look at, what they're putting out and what they're developing for growth hacking? Is there anyone that you really look at, or any blogs, articles, websites that you
Uh,
frequently view?
yeah, I mean, I would say Nick Patel is a great one. He's always doing a lot on growth hacking and optimization on content marketing. Uh, there's a lot of podcasts out there that's around this as well. And then I would really look at Optimizely has a lot of really great resources on, they write a lot of good content on actually A/B testing and ways to actually do a lot of these different A/B testing. So I would look at that.
Okay, great, thank you. And so the next question is, how long would you run a test typically on ads?
On ads, I would say, it depends on your target and who you're going after. But if you probably try to keep it within a week and see if you can get results from that, and if you see the trend and is going in the right direction, then continue to do it. And if the trend is not, I would try to look at figuring out, what some changes you may need to do. And you may not need to do a lot of change, but you may need to tweak it a bit to, again, retarget your potential customers.
And then this next one is, so you mentioned not to focus on churn over the course of the next few months because of COVID, and instead on product usage. So, what type of metrics would you be looking for, or would be important for you as you are looking at usage to determine whether somebody may potentially churn, or somebody is, turning into one of your kind of champion customers?
Yeah. So I mean, how many times are they logging in a week, right? So if you're an active customer and if it's on a B2B, if they're logging in once, twice, three times a week, or on a B2C, how many times are they logging in? So logging is one, but that's one part of the metric. I would say once they log in, how much time are they spending in your app or your applications, right? Because that's going to also dictate who's actually using it heavily, and they're your champions. They're the ones that's going to give you more insights into what you need to know. So paying attention to those two metrics is going to be key. And if somebody's going to churn, I mean, if they haven't logged in for weeks, it's a starting pattern to show you that they're going to start to churn, right? And you can go back and then, I mean, look at your analytics. You can start to see, like, if you pull out all your customers and how much usage that they have, you can easily tell, the churn rates of those customers.
Okay, so just going to put one last call out to see if we have any outstanding questions. But just as we're waiting on that, on the topic of A/B testing, I've seen a lot of companies do really interesting things to A/B test in different ways. I think a really great example is a newsletter that I follow. They put a newsletter out every day, and what they do is the newsletter will typically come out around 3 p.m. in the afternoon. But at 10 a.m., they basically take 10% of their total email subscriber list and send out to 5% one subject header line, and to the other 5% the other kind of subject header line. And whichever one gets more engagement is the one that they actually use to send out at 3 p.m. So I thought when I heard that, that was like a really interesting way for them to kind of do this A/B testing, even for a very later stage company, one that's venture backed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with experiment, it's once you get comfortable with it, and this is part of your everyday process. I think you start to build different creative approaches to optimize your campaigns, right? And so that's a perfect example where now they're testing before the email goes out, and seeing which one works well, right? So Yeah, it's, it's definitely very effective.
And so another question that just came up was, since a lot of traditional B2B ways of selling have kind of been put to the side or have been disrupted, face-to-face meetings, going to conferences and trade shows, where would you put all of your kind of time and attention if you were to try to acquire customers from, the different examples you gave, whether it was email marketing, content strategy, which one do you think would give people the kind of biggest bang for their buck right now?
I would say right now, like content strategy is something that I would put put a lot of effort into, especially content strategy. And I think the key with content strategy is like, pick, like I said, topics that are really gonna, grab the attention of your potential customers, right? And so to really, and not just at a high level, go deep into subject matters that's gonna really, pull in. And so on a B2B, let's say if you're dealing with on a corporate side and your IT is as one of your stakeholders, what do they care about? And today, like security is a big part of that, right? And then so if you're offering something that's really, it needs to be vetted by IT, pick a topic in security and that ties to your product and bring that as a topic and write about it. The other one, I think I would say should be utilized more as like a live virtual session, where if you can get partners and customers to join, then you're going to get a lot of interest from potential customers to actually attend this session, because then they'll see that it's not just you as a company hosting it. You've got actually other parties, and they see it more of a neutral environment for them, and so their willingness to come and attend and participate in those is going to be much higher. So I would look at doing that.
Sorry, yeah, I can just say that I think given where the world is moving today, webinars are definitely one of the things that I think have been wholly underutilized. One of the ones that I know another company from the DMZ has used pretty effectively is Webinar Jam. If any of you want to kind of look into that technology a little bit more. But another question from our audience is, you mentioned that you should reposition your value proposition to more about kind of conserving costs or potentially cutting costs. Could you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think so. With your customers, they're looking to reduce cost, right? And so if you can be a solution for them in that process, if your product is, you can, for example, let's say your solution can reduce, a few headcounts on their side, then that's going to be a value add for them because they're going through some of these customers are going through layoffs and they're not going to be able to sustain the headcounts. So if there's parts where you can reposition your value proposition to target in that way, I would definitely look at that. The other is like, in terms of cost cutting, look at, ways for you to provide additional value by, giving them a discount on overall your offerings, right? So that during this period of time, you get 3 months off of your licensing cost and ways that looks as a value prop to them.
Another question is, do you have a favorite creative platform for tweaking the actual content of the web pages as you are A/B testing?
I mean, I don't have a favorite one, but what I would say is there are a lot of A/B testing tools for website out there. Obviously platforms like Webflow and WordPress have some integrations into those as well. So I would look at that. Yeah, so, but if you look at Optimizely and similar products like Optimizely, this is what they do and this is what their expertise are. So I would just do some research in that area.
Got it. And the next question is around, so you've seen the response by a lot of different organizations, discounting or offering kind of free trials or extending the free period, in response for COVID to allow organizations to kind of use software or get the help or support they need without there being a, financial burden for now. So how do you view these types of strategies to gain customers with a free offering to use during the kind of COVID pandemic, and then essentially kind of turning on the tap and saying, okay, COVID is done now, it's time to pay? How do you view that acquisition strategy?
I mean, it's I think it's it's a strategy that potentially will have a benefit, right? And because you're you're not by doing that, you're acquiring a customer. If you didn't do that, you might have not acquired that customer anyways. So I think the key is like this is a way for you to get the customer in, have them get comfortable with your product and your service. That when the pandemic is done, um, they have a choice. They can pay and continue to use it. And if they see value in your product, they'll continue to use it. And they wouldn't mind paying for it. Yeah, sure. Are you going to have some churn after that? Yeah, you will. That's natural. But I think, I'll give you a perfect example. Like Peloton came out and they said they're giving out 3 months for free. I never looked at signing up for Peloton and I never had the interest for it. So I was like, oh, pandemic time, like let me see what they have. And that allowed me to understand they actually had more than what I had perception of them, which was the only perception I had with them was they had these spin bikes with a monitor and you do live classes. They have actually a lot of online classes and on-demand classes. And so my perceptions change, right? So I've created much more brand awareness. So do I think is it gonna when I have to start paying for it after the 3 months? Yeah, they're gonna have some churn. That's a natural, but it's at least you've captured some customer base through that, and it's a way to encourage brand awareness.
Do you have a bike, or is it on the way right now?
Not yet, but I am tempted.
um,
But like it just shows that. I mean, I was talking to you, Shane, about this, but the Zoom got a lot of scrutiny lately. But they went from like the CEO wrote a great blog about this. They went from 10 million meetings per day prior to the pandemic to 200 million per day, right? Like that's just like 20x in terms of your growth. And yeah, like people are going to scrutinize it. You're going to have a lot of people looking at the services, but they're still, they're still able to actually continue to offer the service, right? So, and the Zoom is became a household name, like to the point, like people not in the tech space or in the enterprise world know about Zoom. Like my kids daycare uses Zoom, right? So it's like that's that. So there's definitely a lot of benefit that I think comes with it. So yeah.
I always use the gauge of, do my parents know this company, as saying, have they quote unquote made it? And so when my parents were like, we're going to Zoom a family dinner tomorrow for the holidays, I was
Yeah,
like, okay, now my parents know what Zoom is, so
yeah,
it's officially there.
yeah.
Cool. So one last question just before we wrap things up, because I know that you have a meeting right after this, is when speaking about different kind of ways to get customers, what are your thoughts on creating a referral program to have people refer customers to your platform, and then either give them some type of kickback, a discount? What's your experience with that?
I think it's I would definitely leverage that. I didn't touch on this. It's affiliate marketing. You I mean, the best thing you can do is really having someone else bring you sales, right? And then referrals are a great way to acquire that. In the B2B world, you have reseller agreements, which are essentially like referrals that they get generally a percentage off the sale that they bring in. So yeah, I would say it's a great way to leverage that and extend your sales capability.
All right, perfect. Well, it seems like that is all of the questions for this afternoon. So once again, thank you so much for providing this session. We really appreciated it and learned a lot. For all of our participants, once again, we'll be sending out a copy of the deck and a recording of this video a little bit later on, if not later today, perhaps sometime next week. But Mano, once again, we really appreciate the time to go over this topic. So thank you very much. And I'll give everyone some time to virtually clap for you now.
Well, thanks again. Thanks for having me, Shane. And I wish everyone the best of luck. I know these are tough times, and hope for the best. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.